My cousin was bound to a life-swapping system. When I was 6, she pushed me into the fire pit. I was left disfigured and crippled for life. But she became healthy, got into a top university, and built a successful career and a happy family. It wasn't until she came to gloat on my deathbed that I finally learned the truth. With my last ounce of strength, I grabbed the fruit knife from the table and plunged it into her. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day she pushed me into the fire. Seeing my cousin walking toward me in the distance, I frantically called for my grandma. "Grandma, I think your ring accidentally fell in there. What do I do?" "You little brat. Are you trying to kill me? You can't do one simple thing right." My money-grubbing grandma came running as expected, cursing under her breath. She shoved me aside and started digging through the hot ashes. I ignored the stinging pain in my hand and just stared intently at the doorway. My cousin was getting closer. Last time, on this very day, Grandma had ordered me to tend the fire. Grandma had 2 sons, and she doted on my uncle. She couldn't stand my dad, my mom, or me, her own granddaughter. But when it came time for someone to take care of her in her old age, she packed her bags and moved right into our house, expecting us to wait on her hand and foot. Back then, people in the countryside still cooked on earthen stoves. We didn't have much money, so ours was just a circle of bricks on the ground. A triangular iron rack sat over the firewood, and that was our stove. It was where my family boiled water for bathing and cooked all our meals. Grandma was lazy. She couldn't even be bothered to boil her own drinking water. Every time, she'd call me, a 6-year-old girl, to tend the fire while she napped on the recliner in the next room. But I never expected my cousin Chloe, who was 9 years older than me, to sneak up behind me. She gave me a hard shove, sending me straight into the blazing fire pit. The boiling water on the iron rack splashed all over me. I screamed, thrashing wildly in the flames. Looking up, I met Chloe's dark, empty eyes. And my grandma was right there, watching the whole thing from the window. In the end, it was my mom coming home from the fields who found me. By then, I was barely breathing. Still, I used all my strength to point at Chloe, who was standing there like nothing had happened. It was her. She pushed me. Mom looked at Chloe in disbelief. She probably couldn't understand why a 15-year-old would do something so horrible. Just as she was about to demand an answer, Grandma started shrieking. "You damn liar. A little girl telling lies like that ought to have her tongue cut out. You fell in by yourself, you clumsy fool. How dare you blame your cousin? Look at your cousin. She can barely walk on her own. How could she push you?" Hearing this, Chloe shot a glare at Grandma for a split second before twisting the hem of her shirt, her eyes welling up. "How could you say that about me, sis? I just wanted to come play with you. How could you say I pushed you?" Mom didn't have time to argue with Chloe. She tried to rush me to the hospital, but Grandma blocked her way. "We can't afford a hospital. Just find some herbs to put on it. Whether she lives or dies is up to fate." My dad, who had rushed home from a card game, agreed with her. He forced Mom to keep me at home, and even slapped her across the face when she started sobbing uncontrollably. Late that night, when I started foaming at the mouth and coughing up blood, Mom finally ignored everyone's objections and carried me to the clinic in town. When the clinic doctor removed the thick layer of herbs, he found my body covered in massive blisters. In some places, the flesh was hanging loosely from the bone. The slightest touch would expose it. The horrifying sight made them refuse to treat me. Mom had no choice but to take me to the county hospital. But after an examination, the doctors there told her my injuries were too severe. All they could do was provide basic care. I needed to go to a bigger hospital in the city. For people in the countryside back then, even going to the county seat was rare, let alone the state capital. Mom begged Dad countless times, but he refused to pay for it. That girl has always been a sneaky little brat. Now she dares to frame her cousin? She's pure evil. What's happening to her is what she deserves. Mom had no other option. She went to the village to report the incident, hoping Chloe's family would pay for my treatment. But the villagers just went straight to my dad and told him to get his wife under control. They were all from the same village. Why stir up trouble and become the town's laughingstock? So, after only 3 days at the county hospital, I was dragged back home. Mom had no money and no choice. She learned what she could from the local folk healer and started digging up herbs for me on the mountain herself. Not long after, my uncle's family came over for dinner as if nothing had happened. Mom was in my room, changing my dressings. Every time, she had to scrape away the dead flesh before applying new herbs. The pain was so unbearable that, for the first time, I begged her, just let me die. Mom's heart broke, and tears streamed down her face. From the other side of the wall, my uncle yelled, "What's all that crying for? Does it really hurt that much?" So annoying. Mom, furious, got into another fight with him. My aunt even smashed a chair over Mom's head. "You son of a bitch. You think our Chloe is an easy target? You're trying to pin this shit on my daughter?" That day, my parents argued for a long time. Through a haze of pain, I heard two words: divorce. But they didn't get a divorce. Life just went on. I guess I was lucky to be alive, but I was scarred for life. My face was ruined, and the scar tissue on my limbs fused my skin together, twisting my arms and legs into useless, deformed shapes. I couldn't even live a normal life. The villagers would stare at me. "That little girl from the Johnson family used to be so pretty," someone would sigh. "Such a shame. She doesn't even look human anymore. How's she ever going to survive?" The year after my injury, my parents divorced. Dad started a new family somewhere else. I heard he even gave me a little brother. Mom didn't ask for anything. She only wanted me. She wiped away her tears, grabbed a bag of clothes with one hand, and led me away from that house with the other. An unregulated factory in the county was hiring. To save money for my surgeries, Mom took the job. In my memories, she would stroke my face just like when I was little. I couldn't feel it anymore, but I could still sense her gentle, careful touch. She promised me, "Mommy will make you look just like you did before." Over the next few years, with the money Mom earned, I had several surgeries. My face never returned to how it was, but at least you could make out a nose and eyes. I looked human again. But my mom's gentle touch stopped forever when I was 16. To make extra money, she worked a day shift right after her night shift. Exhausted, she fell into an industrial mixer and was killed instantly. It was a huge scandal and made the city papers. Under pressure from the authorities, the factory paid a large settlement. That's when my dad and grandma, who I hadn't seen in 9 years, showed up. They claimed that since I was still a minor, they had to manage the money for me. I was taken back to the village and locked away in that dilapidated old house. That's when I found out that in just 9 years, both my uncle and my dad had built 2-story houses, the nicest ones in the village. The constant dampness and gloom of the old house caused my skin to break out in infections again. As I lay dying, Chloe appeared. To be honest, I didn't even recognize her. The Chloe I remembered had a left leg crippled by polio. She also had a large, dark birthmark on her face, and the other kids in the village were scared of her. But the woman standing before me wore a miniskirt, showing off 2 long, straight legs. Her skin was flawless and fair. I was stunned. How had Chloe changed so much? She pinched her nose in disgust and sneered. "Oh, my dear little cousin, I really have you to thank. If it weren't for you, how could I be living such a wonderful life? Don't you find this face a little familiar?" It turned out that Chloe had been bound to a life-swapping system since she was a child. The system told her I was born with an incredibly lucky fate. Whatever I lost, she would gain. "Oh, by the way, my mom got cancer last year. I had no choice, so I found your mother. I had someone tell her that if she had an accident at the construction site, the company would pay out a huge sum. So you see, your mother really, really loved you." I trembled, my heart seizing with a pain so intense it felt like I was suffocating. As Chloe turned to leave, smug and triumphant, I summoned my last bit of strength, grabbed the fruit knife from the table, and stabbed her in the back, again and again, until her flesh was a mangled mess. As I died, I thought with grim satisfaction that taking my enemy down with me was worth it. I just never thought I'd wake up again, back at age 6. Last time, I couldn't understand why no one but my mother would believe me. Especially Grandma. She saw the whole thing. How could she lie so blatantly? I located Grandma's position. The door blocked most of her, but I could just make out the corner of her dress. The light in our house was dim. Chloe would never see her. Once I was sure, I spoke in a low voice. "Grandma, do you know how much it hurts to be burned?" Grandma turned to me confused. What? I slowly got up from the floor, dusting off my hands. Don't worry. You're about to find out. A shadow fell over her. Grandma seemed to sense something and whipped her head around in disbelief. Ah, ah, ah. She let out a blood-curdling scream, rolling on the ground and trying to get up. But the raging fire and the scalding water were no joke. Pinned down by both, she had no strength to stand. Flames quickly engulfed her. Her exposed skin turned a terrifying red, and soon, the faint smell of cooking meat filled the air. Watching her squirm like a dying dog, a wave of triumphant revenge washed over me. Chloe just stood there, frozen in shock. While she was distracted, I bolted out the door. Our house was on a hillside, overlooking terraced rice paddies. The adults were all on their way home from the fields. I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Help! Dad, Mom! Grandma fell in the fire pit. She's cooked." My voice echoed through the valley, lingering for a long time. Soon neighbors started running over. Chloe stared at the scene, her face a mask of shock. I shot her a defiant smirk. Even if she wanted to do something to me now, it was too late with everyone watching. Pushing through the crowd, I finally got a look at Grandma. Her face, once wrinkled like an orange peel, was now eerily smooth from the burns. I was sure that if you wiped it gently, the skin would just slide right off. Just like her favorite dish, fall off the bone pig's trotters. I squeezed out a couple of tears, let out a loud wah, and rushed toward her. My hands landed right on her face, the pain jolting her back to consciousness just as she was about to pass out. She let out a pig-like squeal. "Ah-h-h-h. Grandma, are you okay? Uncles, aunts, please help my grandma. I'm begging you all. Our family can't lose Grandma." When no one was looking, I gave her face another hard pinch. Grandma's eyes finally rolled back in her head. Another pinch, and they snapped forward again. Someone couldn't take it anymore, rushing over to pick me up and cover my eyes. What a good girl Summer is. So devoted to her grandmother. Look, she's about to faint from crying. If she hadn't called for help, old Mrs. Johnson would have been cooked to a crisp before anyone noticed. That old lady never treated this little granddaughter right, but in the end, it was the little one who saved her life. The person speaking shot a meaningful look at Chloe, who was standing off to the side. The villagers who came to help had seen it all clearly. As Grandma's favorite grandchild, Chloe hadn't said a word from beginning to end. She hadn't even glanced at her. She just stood there in disbelief, muttering, "How could this happen? It's impossible. I don't want this old hag's life." A thrill of pure satisfaction shot through me. "Oh, Chloe, Chloe. You love being a thief so much? Fine, steal all you want. What's wrong with an old woman's life? So she's a little older, her time a little shorter? At least she has all her limbs, just a few extra wrinkles. And you're complaining? This is what you chose." Before long, my parents, uncle, and aunt all came running, out of breath. My dad, the ever-dutiful son, dropped his hoe and started wailing. "Mom. Oh, Mom, what happened to you?" My uncle, equally heartbroken, pushed through the crowd to get to Grandma, but the sight of her was so gruesome he couldn't help but throw up. "Mom, blurg. Who did this to you, you monster? Tell me, and I'll get justice for you. Blurg." My uncle glared at the crowd, determined to find a culprit. Everyone knew that taking my grandma to the hospital in this state would cost a fortune. The crowd took a few steps back, their eyes wary. "Hey, Johnson, don't go blaming innocent people like a mad dog. Your mom was already in the fire pit when we got here. It's got nothing to do with us." My uncle ignored his dying mother and started arguing with the villagers. My mom just held me close, checking me over for any injuries. A warmth spread through my chest, and tears welled up in my eyes. "Mom, this time, I won't let you suffer like you did before." Just then Grandma spoke from the ground. Every time she opened her mouth, it looked like she was in agony. "It was Chloe. That little bitch pushed me." Well, Grandma. So you do feel the pain when it's your own skin on the line." All eyes turned to Chloe. She instinctively waved her hands, her face pale with fear. No matter what, Chloe was only 15. She couldn't figure out why she'd meant to push me, but it had ended up being her beloved grandmother instead. And besides, the scene was so horrifying that she was scared stiff. My dad gritted his teeth, looking like he wanted to tear Chloe apart. Smack. He slapped Chloe so hard she fell to the ground. She clutched her face and sobbed. "Uncle, I swear I didn't." Grandma fell by herself. The same old excuse. My aunt rushed forward, pushing my dad away and shielding her daughter. Your mother's been burned half to death. Her mind's all scrambled. You can't believe a word she says. Chloe loves her grandma more than anyone. How could she do something like this? But Grandma didn't change her story. Her terrifying face and hateful eyes were fixed on Chloe. It was chilling. My dad, my uncle, and my aunt immediately started screaming at each other. The main topic was who was going to be responsible for Grandma's medical bills. My dad insisted that since Chloe pushed her, my uncle's family should pay. My uncle argued that since it happened at our house, my dad should be responsible. When money was on the line, everyone's ugly side came out. Then someone suggested, Summer was here when it happened. Why don't we ask the kid? Chloe panicked and cut in. Summer's only 6. What would she know? My dad shot her a warning look, and she shut up immediately. Now everyone was staring at me. Finally, I burst into loud sobs. Grandma fell by herself. She fell by herself. My uncle and aunt were overjoyed. They grabbed my shoulders. Summer, are you telling the truth? Chloe hadn't expected me to say that, and she finally let out a sigh of relief. When she looked up at me again, her eyes were filled with the same disdain as before, as if to say I was an idiot. My dad was the first to snap. He lunged at me. You're full of shit. What the hell are you talking about? My mom protectively pulled me into her arms. Now my uncle's family was on my side. My uncle sighed. Sam, why are you picking on a child? Summer's only 6. Do you really think she can lie? The crowd fell silent. I fell silent too. That's not what you said last time. In the end, under the watchful eyes of my uncle and aunt, my dad took Grandma to the clinic. The doctors on duty were the same ones from my past life. They frowned. Ugh, another patient with such severe burns? Go get her to a bigger hospital immediately. Maybe you can still save her life. We can't treat this here. My dad had pulled Grandma all the way there on a cart like a workhorse. Now, supervised by my uncle, he was panting as he went to find a car in town. As I was leaving, I heard one of the doctors muse. Strange, why did I say another one? 10 days later, my dad and uncle returned, looking defeated, with Grandma wrapped head to toe in bandages. The doctors in the city said it would take at least $300,000 to treat her. 300 grand. I couldn't make that much in 10 lifetimes. My brother and I talked it over. We're just going to bring her back and see if Doc Miller can do anything. $300,000 was an astronomical sum for a rural family back then. But in my past life, my dad and Grandma wouldn't even let me go to the clinic. A bitter resentment welled up inside me. And if I was miserable, Grandma was going to be miserable too. In my last life, my mom learned a lot about herbal medicine from Doc Miller. I knew which herbs looked similar but had opposite effects. For example, what my grandma needed most was something to promote new tissue growth. So, I went out and found herbs that would make her wounds fester and rot. I bravely volunteered to take on the task of changing Grandma's dressings. Grandma didn't even look human anymore. Her facial features were melted together, and her ears were completely gone. Her limbs were twisted into grotesque shapes. Every time I changed her bandages, she would let out a horrific scream. She was no longer in any state to ask why I'd said she fell on her own. She would whisper weakly, Summer, you're the only one who cares. Chloe is nothing but an ungrateful monster. When my aunt gave birth to Chloe, Grandma was over the moon, despite the village's strong preference for boys. She loved Chloe like the apple of her eye and raised her herself. But when I was born, she didn't help my mom for a single day. It was a shame that Chloe got polio when she was 3. She survived, but it left her with a permanent limp. To make matters worse, when she was 4 or 5, the small birthmark on her face started to grow, and by now it was the size of a child's hand. Because of this, the other kids in the village always bullied her. When she started school, her classmates ostracized her and gave her cruel nicknames, which made her hate school. Seeing her beloved granddaughter end up like this, Grandma was racked with guilt and doted on her even more. I gently applied the medicine to Grandma's wounds, making sure every inch of skin was covered. I would also tirelessly give her gentle massages, so the herbs would absorb better. Over time, both my dad and my grandma's opinion of me began to change. "Grandma, you have to keep fighting," I'd say. "You have to hang on a little longer, so I can get my revenge. If you just died now, wouldn't that be letting you off too easy? After all, I suffered for 10 years. You're just getting started." The next time I changed Grandma's bandages, chunks of flesh came off with the gauze. The wounds even started to stink. I used a chopstick to poke into a hole, and I could see white maggots squirming inside. Grandma was barely hanging on. She moaned, "It hurts, it hurts. Sam, Joe, Maria, my children, why don't you come see me?" My dad had long since grown tired of her nightly screams and had stopped coming home. And my uncle, feeling that Grandma had wrongly accused his precious Chloe, refused to bring her to visit. I cleaned her up and applied a fresh layer of herbs. I whispered in her ear, "Grandma, you have to stay alive. Stay alive to see how karma gets you in the end." Grandma's body jolted. She was probably glaring at me. Too bad her eyes were mostly burned away. While my grandma was here counting down her last days, things were going south for Chloe. The village was buzzing with rumors this morning. People were saying that Chloe must have used some kind of black magic to hurt her grandma otherwise. How could her legs suddenly be healed? If there wasn't something fishy going on, why was her family trying to sneak away in the middle of the night? Our family was eating when we heard the rumor. My dad slammed his chopsticks down. "Son of a bitch. That bastard Joe is playing me for a fool. Chloe definitely pushed Mom. Why should I have to take care of her for something they did?" At this, my dad seemed to remember something. He stared at me with fury in his eyes and slapped me hard across the face. "You little brat, it's all because of your lies. Otherwise, that old hag wouldn't be stuck in our house." My dad's voice was loud, and the mud brick walls weren't soundproof. I heard Grandma groan from her deathbed in the next room. My dad raised his hand again, but my mom shoved him away and held me tight. Summer is only 6 years old. What does she know? You're so tough hitting your own daughter. Why don't you go find your brother Joe who's treating you like an idiot? If you lay another finger on Summer, I swear I'll kill you." Both my dad and I were stunned. My mom was a very traditional, quiet woman. Even though I was her whole world, she had never dared to speak to my dad like that. I had a feeling something wasn't quite right. My dad's face turned red. He actually seemed intimidated by my mom. He kicked over a stool and stomped outside, muttering, "My own mother doesn't treat me like a person. My brother doesn't treat me like a person. And now even you look down on me. I'll show you today whether I've got any guts or not." As Dad stormed out, Mom straightened my clothes and said firmly, "Summer, I'm going with your dad to see what's going on. You stay here and be good, okay? Don't run off." I nodded. But the second my mom left, I followed her. There was no way I was going to miss this show. Last time, after I was injured, my uncle's family moved away not long after. Their excuse was that they were afraid my mom would come to their house and cause a scene again. So in my past life, no one knew about Chloe's transformation. If Chloe hadn't come to gloat before I died, I might never have learned the truth. After all, I had no reason to hate Chloe. I was just a 6-year-old girl. There was no reason for her to attack me. This time, I kept a close eye on my uncle's house. Our houses were only a few dozen yards apart. I could see everything that went on. These past few days, while taking care of Grandma, I'd been watching their house. Ever since Grandma's accident, my uncle had been keeping a low profile. But late at night, when everyone else's lights were out, I would hear rustling noises from their house. I noticed that things from their yard had been brought inside. They were definitely planning to move. Last night, the noises started again. Without a second thought, I tossed a few big rocks into old Mrs. Gable's yard. Mrs. Gable lived right next door to my uncle, and she was the biggest gossip in the village. A moment later, my uncle's family crept out of their house with their luggage. I could clearly see Chloe, bundled up from head to toe, carrying a bag and walking faster than anyone. Mrs. Gable heard the noise and came out, cursing, "Which little brat is out there? I'll skin you alive." Just then, she saw my uncle's family. "Joe, what are you all doing out so late? Chloe, your leg is healed." My uncle and aunt shielded Chloe behind them, forcing a smile. Mrs. Gable, you're seeing things. I haven't been back to my wife's family home in years. We were just planning on taking Chloe for a visit. But Mrs. Gable wasn't easily fooled. Her eyes lit up like she'd discovered a huge secret. Joe, when your mother got hurt, she said Chloe pushed her. You're not trying to skip town, are you? My uncle lost his temper and started arguing with her. Mrs. Gable's sharp tongue was legendary. She put her hands on her hips and started shouting. That Chloe girl has always been a gloomy one. She'd even hurt her own grandmother. And now her leg is suddenly better? She must be practicing some kind of black magic. The commotion woke up half the neighborhood. My uncle's family had no choice but to retreat back into their house and bolt the door. But just before she went inside, Chloe shot Mrs. Gable a sinister look. Mrs. Gable froze for a second, then yelled even louder. What are you looking at? You ungrateful brat who hurts her own grandma. Are you trying to put a curse on me too? I was hiding under the wall, trying my best not to laugh out loud. When my parents arrived, they ran right into Chloe. She was walking up the steps, her gait perfectly normal. But it wasn't even the dead of winter, and she was wearing a thick padded jacket and a big hat. My dad was shocked. Joe, Chloe's leg is healed? My uncle's family was surprised by our sudden visit. Especially Chloe. She let out a strange cry and tried to run back inside. But my dad was quick. He lunged forward and grabbed her arm. He pointed at her leg, his eyes wide with rage. Joe, I haven't seen Chloe in just a few days. How could her leg heal so fast? My uncle's face went through several shades of red before he finally said, Our Chloe is just blessed. Is that a problem? He said that, but even an idiot could see something was wrong with Chloe. My dad let out a strange laugh. It was Chloe who hurt Mom, wasn't it? My uncle's face turned purple. Bullshit. He pointed at me by the gate. Your own daughter said Mom fell by herself. By now, a large crowd led by Mrs. Gable had gathered at my uncle's gate. Chloe was on the verge of tears. She buried her head and yelled, That's right, Uncle. My little cousin saw everything that day. How can you not believe your own daughter? That shut my dad up. The crowd started murmuring, everyone staring at Chloe like she was a monster. Chloe shot me a look, the exact same one she'd given me in my past life. I took a deep breath, worked up my emotions, and burst into tears. It was Chloe who pushed Grandma. She said if Grandma was crippled, she could walk again. She said if I didn't say what she told me to, she'd do the same thing to me that she did to Grandma. Wah, I was so scared. I didn't dare to tell. As soon as I said it, the crowd backed away, their eyes filled with suspicion. Chloe really does know black magic. That's terrifying. How can we have someone like that in our village? We have to tie her up. She'd even hurt her own grandmother. What if she comes after us next? Yeah, tie her up. Chloe was trembling as she tried to defend herself, but no one believed her. She probably couldn't understand how things had spiraled so out of control. A few villagers ran home to get ropes. Several strong men looked eager to act. My uncle and aunt, desperate to protect their daughter, blocked their way. My daughter is not a monster. If you want to touch her, you'll have to go through us first. My uncle had a what are you gonna do about it look on his face. The villagers exchanged glances. The next second, my uncle and aunt were on the ground, buried under a rain of fists. Get her. Get the monster. Chloe was terrified and ran for her life. My uncle and aunt scrambled to their feet and started fighting with the villagers. The scene devolved into chaos. I saw Chloe running toward me, muttering under her breath. It's okay. I'll just have the system switch me with someone else. It's okay, as long as I have the system. I casually stuck out my foot. Chloe went down, face first in the dirt. Her hat fell off. Hiss. The crowd gasped. My mom hugged me tight and covered my eyes. But through the gaps in her fingers, I saw what Chloe looked like now. She was a teenage girl, but her hair was completely white. Her face was covered in deep wrinkles and her skin sagged. Her eyes were cloudy and filled with despair. Whoa. My cousin had turned into my grandma. Intense. Seeing Chloe like this, the villagers who had been shouting about killing the monster were now too scared to approach. My aunt collapsed on the ground, sobbing. My uncle, his face swollen like a pig's, just sighed over and over. But Chloe lunged at me like a madwoman, pushing my terrified mother aside. Her withered fingers closed around my neck. I knew something was wrong. Do you have a system too? I was trying to push you that day. How did it suddenly become that old woman? It was you. You did this. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Seeing me like this? I choked and coughed. I don't know what you're talking about. Let go of me. My mom was the first to react. She grabbed a wooden stick from the ground and hit Chloe with it. Her eyes were red as she screamed, "You're not going to hurt my daughter again." After saying that, a look of confusion crossed her face, as if she didn't know why she had said the word again. But my eyes filled with tears. Ever since I was reborn, I'd noticed small details that suggested some people retained memories from their past lives. They just weren't sure, thinking maybe they'd dreamed it. After all, being reborn was too unbelievable. The blow from the stick stunned Chloe. It took her a moment to recover. This time, her face lit up with joy, and she started talking to herself. "System, you're finally back. I can swap with a blood relative? Then. I don't care anymore. I can't stand looking at my own face. I'm not going to live the rest of my life like this." Mrs. Gable was terrified. She yelled at the other villagers. "What's she muttering about? Is she casting a spell? What are you all standing around for? Tie her up." The villagers snapped out of their stupor and moved toward Chloe with the ropes. That's when everything went wrong. Chloe suddenly lunged at my uncle with a vicious look on her face, stabbing him 3 times. The look of surprise was frozen on his face. Before anyone could even scream, Chloe was in front of my dad. My dad looked bewildered. He'd just been watching the show, not expecting the drama to turn on him. The knife was at his throat. Squelch. Blood sprayed everywhere. The crowd finally erupted in screams. Just then, 2 loud bangs came from the gate. "Nobody move." The police had Chloe. Before I went to my uncle's house, I'd used our landline to call them. This village was rough and superstitious. If Chloe had been caught by the villagers, she probably would have been beaten to death. But like I said, death is an escape. I pretended to be terrified. It took several officers to calm me down enough to explain what I saw. First, Chloe tried to murder Grandma, leaving her critically injured. Then today, in front of the whole village, she murdered my uncle and seriously wounded my dad, who was now fighting for his life. The police saw it with their own eyes. Mrs. Gable was still vividly describing how Chloe used black magic to hurt people. The officer taking notes frowned. "Don't spread superstitious nonsense." In the end, Chloe was declared mentally incompetent and sent to a psychiatric hospital. Her rapid aging and the miraculous healing of her legs were diagnosed by experts as the result of some unknown virus. When Chloe was taken away, she was still defiant, shouting at the sky, "You can't lock me up forever. I will find the perfect life." The staff at the psychiatric hospital had heard her story. For treatment, she was kept in a separate ward, with no contact with anyone else. The second month Chloe was locked up, my grandma finally died. By the end, there wasn't a single patch of healthy skin left on her body. The villagers who came to help with the funeral couldn't help but throw up. Accompanied by my mom, I went to visit Chloe at the hospital. She was strapped to a chair, looking and acting like a 70-year-old woman. She would laugh one moment, cry the next, then start demanding her system. "I already killed them. Why do I still look like this? System, come out. Come out." I didn't know if Chloe was really crazy or just faking it. In my last life, right before I died, I vaguely heard a cold voice. It was cursing Chloe for being useless, for messing up her one and only chance to steal a life. Tiske. That system was no good either. Now, Chloe's only hope was that the system would give her another chance to change her fate. So I decided to give her some good news. "Hey cousin. Grandma's dead. Now you can fully inherit her life." Chloe's facade instantly crumbled, and she started screaming. The nurses quickly gave her a sedative. Chloe had been dreaming of getting out and stealing someone else's life, but unfortunately for her, Grandma was dead, and she had inherited the rest of Grandma's remaining lifespan along with everything else. In the coming days, her organs would rapidly fail until she reached the physical state of a 70-year-old. Even if she were released, she would have no quality of life. And Chloe, who was so obsessed with beauty and success, would never be able to stand living in that body. Unfortunately, the hospital's suicide prevention measures were excellent. Chloe couldn't find a single opportunity to end her own life. Oh, by the way, that scumbag I called Dad died too. Mom signed the DNR papers that same day, and he was brought home on the back of a 3-wheeled cart. He lingered for 3 days before he finally passed. The day he died, I told my mom everything about my past life. She held me and cried all night. The next day, she had his body cremated. On our way out of the hospital, we happened to pass a convenience store with a lottery counter. I remembered something Chloe had said in my past life and bought a ticket. I won $1 million on the spot. Looking at the long string of zeros, I couldn't help but smile. This is my life.